The Data Nerd, Episode 1, Finding Your Data Analytics Career. How to find a job, what type of skills are people looking for?
For sure. Yeah. Specifically the data that I pulled together is on data analytics related roles. What I've been able to do over the last 4.5 years or so is kind of now have this aggregated, summary where I can see what the trends have been.
Welcome to the Data Nerd Podcast. I'm your host, Nisar Ahmed. Join me as we explore the inner data nerd inside all of us. Dive into the world of data alongside special guests who not only share their wealth of experience and knowledge, but also unveil what truly makes them data nerds. This podcast is brought to you by Business Intelligence. That's Biznis Intelligence. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Business Intelligence to stay up to date with Tableau training and the Data Nerd podcast. Connect with me on LinkedIn or stream the Data Nerd podcast across all major podcast platforms. Welcome, everyone. Today in our podcast, we're going to be talking about finding your data analytics career. And today I would like to introduce our guest, Dustin Schimek. Dustin has been in the data analytics field for 11 plus years. He has experience leading analytics initiatives within organizations and managing data products. He also co-founded the Data Analytics or Data Career Summit and co-hosts the Data Ideas podcast. And in this past year, Dustin was also named as a Tableau Social Ambassador for the first time. So welcome, Dustin. Glad to have you on board.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Nisar, for the invitation and excited to be here.
Yeah, Dustin and I we met online on LinkedIn. That's how we got connected. I teach a data analytics course. And in the last week, I always like to have a guest on to talk about data careers and data planning and career planning. And Dustin has been, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 times on our classes, right? In those sessions.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
really enjoy that. That's been a highlight of my career is to be able to join classes like that. And I really do enjoy it. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that kind of stuff.
yeah, likewise. And I know that from students' feedback, they always enjoy the insights that you give. And I'm hoping that this podcast will shed a light to everyone out here, all our listeners, and you'll be able to share some of your valuable insights.
Awesome.
So I'd like to begin first. I'll give you a little bit of a story on myself, and then I'm going to ask you an icebreaker question.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to start off with this icebreaker. So, whether you're in a data nerd or not, data is all around us. It's captured in all different types of platforms, whether it be smartphones, smartwatches, in our cars, or various other platforms. So I realized at a young age that I was a data nerd when I track and analyze video game statistics as a kid. When I used to play games with my brother, usually sports games for the most part. And I would gather data, create tournaments, track the data. And it was something that I enjoyed and excited me. And I think that's when I realized that I was a data nerd. So my question for you, Dustin, are you a data nerd? And if so, tell me your story and when you realized you were one.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the question. I definitely had moments. I don't know if I could point to one specifically, but I definitely have had some moments where very early on where I realized I was one. And one of the earliest is actually when I was a kid, probably 9 or 10 years old. I had the first computer that I'd been introduced to. It was probably a 386 or something like that. And
Yeah.
my dad actually he saw, my son here seems to have some abilities with this computer. He seems to kind of have some talent with it, and he would always, put together some financial statements. He worked in the business world, and would track, our expenses and income as a family and things like that. And he was definitely a numbers guy himself. And he started giving me all of the stuff that he used to organize manually, in his own manual records or handwritten records, and said, "Hey, would you be willing to put this into a spreadsheet for me?" And I just loved it. I was always tinkering around with the spreadsheet program on my computer, and I said, absolutely. And, he paid me a few bucks, maybe boosted my allowance a little bit. to put together some of his financial stuff, together on my computer on a spreadsheet. And I just love doing stuff like that. And I realized, when my dad asked me to do that for him, I thought, gosh, maybe I am kind of good at this stuff.
Mm.
That he trusted me to do that, and so that was one of the first times that I noticed it for sure. And then I started to get more sophisticated with some of the nerdy stuff that I would do. I remember when I got into high school, I had a project that I was given where actually the whole class was given a country, and it was a geography class, and every person was given a country, and they had to do a project, kind of a year-end project. I was open-ended on that country, and I have a picture actually of myself with this project.
Okay.
Actually, my mom just sent it to me actually a few weeks ago. She was digging through some old stuff, and what I did was so I had taught myself HTML, way back when people were first starting to build websites, and I built this website for my project. But the country that I got was Italy, and the project that I did was I actually built a Jeopardy game that was interactive, like a website where you could go and you could play Jeopardy, and all the questions were on Italy, and so you could click on the different squares, $100 through $500 for each category, and then you get asked a question, and you could put the answer in, and then depending on what you answered, it would say whether it was right or wrong. And I just thought that this was just like a normal thing to do, but my geography teacher was just blown away, and he invited me actually to present it to the school board, this project that I did. So from the beginning, I knew that I had these nerdy tendencies, and that definitely ended up playing itself out throughout my career.
That's awesome. I think anytime you can make it fun, working with data fun, it makes it that much more enjoyable, right? And at the end of the day, if you're working in data and you're enjoying it, it's not a job, right? It's really something you enjoy. Um, it's funny that you're talking about how your dad kind of got you into data as well, because I have a similar type of story. Like my dad was a computer science teacher, right? And he would do computer classes for the community at our in our basement at home. They would come, every weekend. And that's kind of how I got into computer as well. I remember she said 386 computers. I remember that. They had 386, and then they went to four. I think it went up to, I forgot what the last one was, but they kept going up. And back the spreadsheets back then, I forget the program. Was it Lotus?
Yeah.
Lotus one, two,
Yep.
three, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what
Yep.
you use?
Yep. I remember Lotus.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah, those are brings back some good memories there.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, okay, so I know I mentioned the Data Career Summit, right? And this is kind of your I don't know, your bread and butter, I
Yeah.
would say, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about about the Data Career Summit and what that is.
Yeah, totally. I appreciate the opportunity to share more about it. So, I co-created the Data Career Summit with someone named Brandy Beals, who's also a Tableau ambassador, and also from my home area here in Milwaukee. We've gotten to know each other through the Milwaukee analytics community, and have created some other content together, collaborated on some projects, and her and I back in around 2017, 2018, the analytics field started hitting an inflection point. We both realized that we were getting a lot of the same questions. When we would talk about some of the content we were creating, we were like, hey, are people asking this? And we were like, yeah, a lot of people are. And a lot of the questions were, hey, Dustin, like, how do I get in to the data field? Or like, how do my son or daughter like get into it? Like, is this a career that they should be thinking about? And again, like I say, I had been in the data field since formally probably like since 2012, but it was really around, I would say 2018-ish, where things started to feel like they were hitting an inflection point where it was really starting to become like a career path that a lot of folks were thinking about. And so as Brandy and I were talking about all these questions that we were getting, we thought, gosh, maybe there's a way to pull together an event that brings together, other experts on the data industry to kind of share out knowledge on what folks need to be thinking about in terms of getting into the field and how they can kind of break in and move up. And our thought was really just, can we bring together experts to kind of share out this information at a greater scale than, her and I felt we could do in terms of answering these questions, one off. So that was kind of how it got started. And we've held several of these over the last couple of years now, and it's just been really well received, probably beyond what we expected it to be, and it is a lot of effort, but it's an event that it does have a free registration option, and if you attend, you can expect to get 3 hours worth of content that all centers around our mission of how to break into and move up in the field. All speakers that we really believe in, that we trust, to share a valuable perspective on kind of how you can get a leg up in terms of differentiating yourself in the field and getting that role or getting that promotion. And then also, just an opportunity to network with others during the event. There's a very active live chat during every event. A lot of folks, will introduce themselves. We've seen, several connections formed during that time and so it's just an event to bring folks together that are interested in the field, whether it be breaking into it or moving up to it. And like I say, putting experts out there to share information on what things they need to be thinking about if they want to have a career in data.
Yeah, it's great. I was fortunate to participate in the last one. I was part of the panel discussion there, and I was able to also network and grow from that as well. So it's always great to not just participate, but even attend those sessions. And so, how often do they occur? I think you have one coming up, right?
Have one coming up, yeah. So we try to do these about every 6 months, so twice per year is our goal with it, and we try to do kind of a spring and a fall one. So this is going to be the spring, depending on where you're at. Here in Milwaukee, it's not quite spring yet, but February 23rd is our next one, and it's a half day. So it's in the morning in Central Time, but we try to do it so that we can catch other time zones throughout the world too. So
Yeah.
it's 3 hours on Friday the 23rd. We also, if you register for the event, we do send out information on how to access the recording afterwards.
And how can they register?
Yeah, so you can go to datacareersummit.com. So just datacareersummit.com, and there's a link to register there. Like I say, if the registration fee is prohibitive, you can always feel free to select the $0 registration fee. If you're a student or have limited income, we don't want that to be a barrier. So there's always the free registration option.
Yeah, that's great. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. So I know when you would participate in my classes, right? And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the questions that come through are related to, how to find a job, what type of skills are people looking for,
Right.
and you've done analysis on this, right? Like you've done
Yes.
an analysis on job descriptions and you've analyzed the data and you've kind of put together, the top skill sets that or tools that are in those descriptions or what people are looking for. So do you have some insights on that? What are employers looking for in data analytics for candidates?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, specifically the data that I pulled together is on data analytics related roles, so there are a variety of different titles in the data field. You have data engineering and data science and machine learning, specialists and things like that. But the titles that I look at are really data analytics related. And so for several years, I've been pulling together kind of since that time frame I mentioned where Brandy and I started talking
Mhm.
back in 2018, 2019. I started to pull together 100 position postings every 6 months. And I would scrape all the details from those postings, like the skills that were required, the years of education that were required in their bachelor's degree requirements, master's degree requirements, things like that. And what I've been able to do over the last 4.5 years or so is kind of now have this aggregated, summary where I can see what the trends have been in there. And you're right, I do see what the top skills are that are being asked for in data analytics related positions, and also how that's trended over time. And in this last report, I'm going to be sharing the latest one in this next career summit on February 23rd. But the last one from 5 or 6 months ago, what I've seen is that in the top five, well, I'm looking at the report right now. I'll just list what they are. SQL is number one. And I'm going to run through these and then I'll give kind of my take on why I think these are in the top
Yeah,
five.
sure.
So SQL's number one. We have Tableau at number two. Python is number three. Power BI is number four, and Excel is number five. Um, what my take on this is, if you're a data analyst, you're being asked to wear sometimes a lot of different hats, and oftentimes what those hats will include to some extent is being asked to get the data. So you've got to extract it from somewhere, you've got to pull it from somewhere, clean it up, and then analyze it, and then tell a story with it. And if I were to go outside, excuse me, of the top 5 skills that are listed here, you're going to see storytelling with data, and then PowerPoint is even in there just outside of the top 10. And so if you think about this theme of, I've got to be able to get the data, I've got to be able to clean it up, I've got to be able to do something with it, analyze it, find some business value in it, and then tell a story with it. Those, in between all of those things that an analyst is doing, that's where I see the greatest demand from a tool perspective or a hard skill perspective.
So that's interesting because I see Python in there, right?
Yeah,
And I do get asked about Python and whether it's really required for data analysts. Um, Typically, I would see Python in job descriptions. Oftentimes, though, I do see it as a good to have, not a
right.
requirement, right? Is that typically what you see as well?
I definitely see it more often, just anecdotally speaking, more often listed as the preferred skill, and less so as required, especially for more entry level, early career stage analyst positions. I also think that that's a skill where, so when I say that it was third, I'm looking at the data right now, it was 30% of the positions, had listed that as a requirement. And so it's, you've got 70% that haven't, right? And so my take on that is, even if you don't know Python, but let's say SQL, at least one of the two big data visualization tools, some good practices around storytelling with data. I think like these are kind of good core skills to start out with. And if you learn enough about Python, or at least have a willingness to, I think, and it's real. And if it turns out to really be needed for the job, I think that that's something that you can continue to work on. But I don't know that I would necessarily, as of today, February 2nd, 2024, recommend that, you try to become an expert in Python before getting your first data job. If you can, that's great. But I wouldn't get too worried about crossing off every single skill off the list. I think I'd get that your mindset, really honed in around, okay, here's how I'm going to generally approach getting data, cleaning it up, doing something with it that's useful, and then presenting that. I think if you can do that, basically, you're in pretty good shape to get an entry level position.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. I also think it also depends on the size of the organization as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Typically in the smaller shops or startups, you may be required to do everything, right, from beginning to end, or wear many hats, right? Larger organizations have, especially when it comes to preparing the data, you're dealing with large data sets, which is a job in itself, just cleaning the data and preparing it. And you may have dedicated departments or data engineers who you may work with
Right.
to get the data for you, right? And so, um, at least from my own experience, I feel like the scope of your skills or what you're required to do does vary depending on the size of the organization. Is that
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
you see as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think size of the organization, even where the organization is at maturity wise, from an analytics journey
Mhm.
standpoint or data, maturity standpoint, those that are earlier, you know, they may not need some of the more advanced skills, even if you are kind of in a jack of all trades, type role. You may be able to make a really big impact with, just maybe having like 3 of these top 5 or 6 skills that we're talking about here. In fact, I know you could make a big impact at an organization
Yeah.
with just having a few skills if they were early in their maturity, cycle, or stages. So I think that maturity, plays a role to it. But then, as an organization gets more mature, they might start to kind of separate out the roles a little bit, and you might have entry level data analysts and data scientists that need a more advanced data science skill set, and data engineers and things like that. So maturity combined with the size of the organization, the objectives, how realistic the organization is, about what they're trying to accomplish. These are all factors that play in. And it's as much as you can get a feel for where the organization is at with those things and how you could fit in and add value, depending on where they're at. I think the better. You can't always get a perfect feel for where an organization is at, but if there's people you can reach out to within the organization, if you're trying to go after a role there and find out where they're at, where this role fits into what they're trying to do, I think you can get a feel very quickly for whether you as an individual with your skills can add value in there. And if you can, then gosh, I would not have any hesitation for trying to go after that position.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, right? When you're looking for, so if you're somebody who's looking to get into data analytics, right? Um, when I teach my courses, there's really three, or the tools that we use are really three core tools, right? Or skill sets. There's Excel, there's SQL, and there's some sort of visualization tool or business
Mm-hmm.
intelligence tool.
Mm-hmm.
I specialize in Tableau, but I know the top two out there are Tableau and Power BI, and you have them listed in top five.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting to see that Tableau is still ahead of Power BI there, right?
It is interesting.
Um, there are debates. I see them on LinkedIn, which one do you prefer, one or the other? Do you have a take on that?
Yeah. I've built a lot of uh, let me put it this way. My career wouldn't be what it was had it not been for Tableau and my investment in learning Tableau. If anyone's watching the video of this, I have my Tableau Ambassador, button behind me. But that being said, um, I think it's to me it's becoming less about the tool and more about the use case, the business use case, and your ability to actually um, execute successfully on a business use case with a certain tool. And I think that if you can, let's say that you want to build a dashboard to give visibility to lead times for your product, from the time it's ordered to the time it's shipped, and that's something that's super valuable to your organization, and they've never had visibility to that at a self-service basis. If that's like if there's a game-changing project, whatever it is, and you can deliver that in a certain tool and do it successfully and train people and get engagement around how to use that, then I can't be too critical of any tool. I'd be pretty supportive of whatever tool it was that was delivered through, because business impact can certainly be made using a variety of different tools. I do personally have my preferences just by virtue of kind of my career journey, but I think it's more about thinking about what's that stuff. What are those needle moving projects that you can do for your company, and then whatever tools you can use to deliver those and build engagement around it. More power to you.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to some of the best practices with using these tools, it doesn't matter which tool you're using,
Correct.
right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, Storytelling with Data is a great book that's out there if you're looking to learn more about like how to, articulate the message, behind what the data is saying, and how you can, just use visual best practices, design best practices to tell a story with data. It's a great book and series of books that's out there to check out. But the interesting thing is I think I heard that a lot of the visuals in that book were built using Excel, and so and yet storytelling with data is like one of the most popular books out there in the business world,
yeah,
for analysts around conveying messages out of data. So I think it just goes to show you that the tool doesn't necessarily always matter.
yeah. No, I agree 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It brings up a good point, or a nice segue here. You talked about storytelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And storytelling involves some type of soft skill, right?
Mm-hmm.
Presentation skills,
Mm-hmm.
communication. Um, Part of the role of a data analyst is managing stakeholders and then presenting to those stakeholders as well, right?
Right.
So I tell students in my class that don't just concentrate on the technical skills. Okay. I think the job of an analyst is about communicating, and the soft skills and presentation skills are just as important and actually may give you a leg up on other candidates, especially when you're applying for jobs, right? That may not have shown up on your top five, but I think the
Right.
storytelling talks to some of those soft skills and presentation skills, right? What's your take on that? What do you think about the soft skills versus the hard skills?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think if you really want to make a big impact, and if you really want to deliver a ton of business value in your role, and you really are serious about wanting to move up in the field for sure, I think that you have to um, have a combination of the two. And the storytelling is one part of it. Getting some basic business acumen is another. And understanding how to connect the dots between what the needs of the business are and how you can serve those needs using your technical skills that you have. That's a big part of it. But also, another thing is also just finding a way to, oftentimes creating data projects. They aren't always like well received by all the business stakeholders. If you do something new that the business or organization has never seen before, not everyone is always going to jump up and down and think it's immediately see the value in it. Some folks may be skeptical of the data, or they may, be a little bit defensive if it's showing something that maybe, someone had dropped the ball on, or maybe, shows some areas of improvement for certain areas of the business. And these things are just natural to happen, and especially actually they're even more likely to happen if it's a good analysis, or if it's a good analyst putting it together. It's going to show some things that are going to poke some holes in things. And
Mm.
this is good usually overall for the organization long term. But it doesn't always, these projects don't always reach their full potential, or we don't always get full value out of them sometimes, because I think not all data professionals have the ability to kind of bring the blood pressure down in the discussions when they're first showing these things, or like get buy-in, or get excitement or engagement around using the data or analysis that they put together. They perhaps, let's say that when they first show a project, they may also get defensive in response to the defensiveness from others or whatever. I think that if you can do the opposite, if you can actually collaborate and build relationships through pulling together these data projects, that's where the rubber is really going to meet the road in terms of impact, not only for the business and for the value of the project, but also for you as a professional.
Yeah, no, and I think the ability to take criticism is also
Hmm.
a um good thing to have, right? As an analyst. Very rarely, and I don't know about you, but for me, when I'm asked to create, let's suppose, a dashboard,
Hmm.
okay, very rarely will the first version of the dashboard be the last.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
There'll be different iterations and back and forth and constructive criticism, I'd say, right? Constructive
For sure.
criticisms.
Yeah.
I don't think you should ever take that personally. Um, so so we talked about some of the skills, we talked about, communication and soft skills. Now, how about networking or finding jobs, or what's the best way to find a job? Is it
Yeah.
applying on LinkedIn? Is it just finding jobs and sending off, hundreds of resumes? Is it talking to people? How important is it to have a LinkedIn presence, and can that help in finding a job? Uh, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a great question. And I know one where there's a lot of discussion around this. You know, I think my biggest piece of advice there is, so I think all of those things are great things to do. And I think that if you find yourself in a position where you really want to find that first job or find a new job or whatever, you have to be a little bit aggressive, and maybe get outside of your comfort zone a little bit. And I think it is doing a combination of things. I think there's a lot of things that you can do to give yourself a better chance to get a role in the field. And the more of those things you do, the better probability you have to get one. And I think, you said several of them. If I were in the position of someone that was, going after that first position, or, going after that promotion or whatever, what I would probably do is every single person I meet in the business world, data world, whatever your field that you're in, I would connect with all of them, and then I would try to go to some in-person networking events. These may take the form of user groups, or any number of types of analytics communities that might exist in your area. And just kind of introduce yourself. Give yourself a goal of introducing yourself to a few people, and just be super honest. Hey, I'm just finishing up this program, or I'm looking to change careers, and this is what I'm going after, and these are some of the things I've been doing to try to do it. I think showcasing on LinkedIn some of the things that you can do, talking about your skills, putting a few featured pieces of content out there on your profile, of like projects you've done that really demonstrate your ability to find a use case and then breathe life into it using some sort of data visualization tool or whatever it is. I think is really good. And then referencing that when you're talking to people. And I think a big thing too is putting yourself out there and asking people if they'd be willing to meet for 25 minutes or whatever. And some people call these coffee chats or virtual
Yeah.
meetups or whatever. That's how you and I met. And we've now been friends for years and have collaborated on a variety of different things, this being one of many, right, that we're doing right now. And it all started with one of those coffee chats or introductory virtual chats. I think just doing all these things, and kind of building a process around doing all of them every day or every few days, I think will put yourself in I'd be surprised if most folks didn't find themselves in a very good position after a few months of that.
Yeah. And I feel like your LinkedIn profile is your business card, right? It's
Yeah,
marketing your brand. And the more effort you put into that and the better you make it, the better chances you'll have. I'm not just talking about getting jobs, but just meeting people,
totally.
knowing or getting to know other people. I think being active on LinkedIn, I'm not talking about just creating posts,
Right.
just liking or commenting on other people's
Absolutely.
posts. Like, how often have you and I gone back and forth on LinkedIn, not
Yeah.
through your post or my post, but
Right.
other people's posts, and we just, we're both commenting on the same things, right?
Totally. Absolutely. I think you'd be surprised by doing things like that, how much, I think folks may feel like, oh, this is just living in a virtual world or whatever. It's really not. It's there's been countless relationships that have been formed from LinkedIn, stuff that started out at LinkedIn, and then also it provides such a great way to stay in touch with folks. It's almost like the main form of it's almost like a mini email for me too, like not just folks I've met on there, but for folks that I've worked with in the past or whatever, reach out, ask them a question. Hey, how's this going? Or, hey, how do you do this? Or, hey, I
Yeah.
need your advice on this. It's just such a great way to have that digital, the digital Rolodex, I think as some folks say,
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. You and I probably message on LinkedIn more than we do on email.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, this was great, Dustin. I think this was all a great advice for anyone who's looking for a data analytics career, getting a career, or even if you're a working professional and just are looking to get into analytics. Like as we mentioned in the beginning, I think regardless of what role you're in, whether you're in a data analyst role or not, you probably are working with some sort of data. And I think the transition won't be as hard because I feel like if you're working or you're professional, you have some professional expertise already, and you can leverage that into any type of analytics role. So,
Absolutely.
no, this is great. Please register for the Data Career Summit if you haven't yet. It's coming up in a couple of weeks, right?
3 weeks from today, I believe. Yeah.
3 weeks
So,
from today. So looking forward to that. And it's always great to have you on, Dustin. And I appreciate it. And we'll talk next time.
yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Nisar. Always good to talk with you.